Our first speaker today is a mother of a severely vaccine-damaged daughter. I first met them about a month ago, and I have to say my heart breaks, and I can only imagine the journey that this family is walking. So the mum has asked not to be filmed or recorded for this session. She will be speaking behind us. So I'm going to hand you over now to Jody for her to share her story. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a mother to 4 gorgeous girls. I've always had a strong justice personality and will not disobey laws. I have even enforced them for 13 years as a serving member of the police service in my state. When my first child was born, she received all of her vaccinations. There was no question in my mind that my children would have all of their vaccinations and could never understand why anybody would deny their child this protection. When my second daughter came along, nothing was going to be different. She was born a strong, healthy baby. Despite a small heart murmur which was fixing itself, she was growing and developing beautifully. She rolled, sat on her own, everything right on time. There was nothing that could ever alarm us that anything could ever be wrong. When she was 6 months old, she was due for her 6-month vaccinations. As she had a cold, we decided to wait until she was better to have them done. As soon as she had recovered, we made another appointment for her to have her needles. This is where my life changed dramatically. The following day after receiving her vaccinations, she ran a fever and was generally grizzly, but then she started doing things that I had never seen her do before. Her eyes would roll back in her head and she would fall to the side. I had no idea what was happening, but it didn't seem to bother her too much, so I didn't worry. However, I was always aware of it happening, as she could no longer sit on her own and had to be propped up or have pillows all around her. As we neared her 12-month needles, I began getting very anxious. Something in my gut just kept telling me not to do it. I kept making excuses with the GP as to why she couldn't have her needles. It just didn't feel right. Eventually, at 15 months, I succumbed to pressure and she received her 12-month needles. I wish I could take these back. The episodes of her eyes rolling back in her head increased tenfold. Nobody could tell me what it was. She not only no longer sat on her own, but she stopped rolling, stopped pulling to stand, and stopped trying to crawl. At one point, she was having over 100 seizures a day and is now confined to a wheelchair. When she was just over 2 years old, we finally saw a paediatric neurologist. I asked him what role have vaccinations played in what is happening to my daughter. His reply, "They have triggered it." I was devastated. I had done this to my child. I had trusted my doctor implicitly. I never asked and I never researched, and now this is happening. This is where my research in earnest began. All of my daughter's vaccinations were to cease immediately at the recommendation of her neurologist. As a trained investigator, I investigated. Every opportunity, I read books, I read every product insert from the vaccine manufacturers, I read research studies and medical articles. I literally left no stone unturned. I then fell pregnant with my 3rd child. She had her vitamin K injection at birth, however I refused the Hep B shot. Shortly after, we learned from our metabolic professor that this child had abnormalities in her placenta, indicating an underlying genetic disorder. At that point, we decided that she would receive no vaccinations due to this. We are unable to get a medical exemption for this child. Doctors want to give her the needles and see what happens. And now the government wants to stop her and her siblings from going to daycare, preschool, and what's next? School? I cannot take these back once they are given, and they cannot guarantee that my children will not react in the same way my other child has. Despite all of my daughter's issues, doctors who took an oath to first do no harm wanted to put my severely disabled child in hospital with ICU on standby and give her her vaccinations. They know they will do her harm, but want to do it anyway. It is our job as parents to protect our children from harm. I may have failed one, but I will not fail another. There is enough conclusive research studies and evidence to show that vaccinations are not 100% safe, as our politicians like to lead us to believe. They have stood up on national television and lied to every Australian. They have ignored the World Health Organisation, who states, and I quote, "Vaccines are not without risks, and it is commonly accepted that regardless of proper design, manufacture and delivery, adverse events occur." The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, to which Australia is a signatory, states, "Each state party to the present covenant undertakes to respect and to ensure to all individuals within its territory and subject to its jurisdiction the rights recognised in the present covenant, without distinction of any kind, such as race, colour, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status." It is time for us to take a stand, not only for our children, but for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to ensure that their rights as human beings on this planet are not taken away due to greed. From the International Bill of Human Rights, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. The government cannot take away our human right to conscience. If politicians can have conscience votes, then it stands to reason that we have the same rights when it comes to medical interventions on us and our kids. The International Bill of Human Rights goes as far as to say, certain rights, therefore, may never be suspended or limited, even in emergency situations. These are the rights to life, to freedom from torture, to freedom from enslavement or servitude, to protection from imprisonment for debt, to freedom from retroactive penal laws, to recognition as a person before the law, and to freedom of thought, conscience and religion.
Big hand to Jody. That was really brave. I'm not sure how you feel, but I've met the family and heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. I want to give you a really, really big thank you, Jody. You've been awesome for us.